We thank you that we can gather here today. We ask that your Spirit would be with us, be with Dr. Tonstad in a very special way. We pray in your name. Amen.
We have extended our series by one more presentation. Dave Larson and I agreed that we could just run all the way through till January the 22nd, so I added one topic, and that makes it all the more necessary to say that it is written in Scripture that he who endures to the end shall be saved. So I cannot promise anything to those who do not endure to the end. So we will have a conversation at our house on, let's see, February 15, yes, at 5 in the afternoon, where we can discuss some of these things. The book issue, we are bringing still a few more books, and reimbursing me is something that will happen through the Roy Branson class. So whatever you want to do there, you have to do it with with the people who coordinate this class. So images and revelation. So the one that we have added is this one, which I'm doing today, and it's topically it's not bad, because to do Revelation and the city and the earth in one sitting is quite demanding. So I'm quite happy that we have been able to tweak it out a bit more. Now, all these topics are related, and they are actually all sort of supportive, or in some ways, in some ways related to the name issue. So I have said here that the most important topic in the book of Revelation is the contest for the name. So to keep that in focus, and it can be represented this way, that it is the name that controls meaning for these other topics, these other words, but those words also have a sort of reciprocal influence on the name. So maybe we will change our view of the name when we have talked about the earth and the city and the tears and the nations and maybe even time. You see what I'm trying to say here? I'm saying that the name is in the center, the name influences our perception of these other things, but given that there is so much damage done, don't take it for granted that you can run straight from a sort of existing perception of the name to these other things. You might just have to work the whole thing over. So then we are doing the earth today. And let me say that there are three surprises here. Surprises in relation to the Christian tradition. Because the Christian tradition does not end the way the book of Revelation ends. It's a big sort of corrective, a big shift difference. Would you agree that the story should end in heaven? That the Christian story ends in heaven? 99.99% of people who believe in God, Jesus, think that the story ends in heaven. But the story in Revelation does not end in heaven. It ends on earth. So that's big. And in the New Testament, the book of Revelation is the only book that explicitly and without any doubt makes the story end on earth. That's, well, if you do Old Testament, the story ends on earth. No problem there. In the Old Testament, there is no reason to believe that anyone in the Old Testament believed that you would ever go to heaven. That's a New Testament conception. So in the Old Testament, you don't go to heaven. In the New Testament, you go to heaven and it ends there. or in Christianity, I should say, the Christian perception, in the book of Revelation, it ends on the earth. And now, okay, so we concede that it ends on the earth. It should then end in the garden. We should go back to Genesis, to Paradise Lost, shouldn't we? So it should end in a garden. But it ends in a city. Because there is a city here in the ending text, isn't there? So it should end in heaven, but it ends on earth. It should end in a garden, but it ends in a city. Our topic next time is the city. And like I said, I cannot vouch for your salvation if you are not here. Surprise number 3. It takes forever to get to the ending, in life, in history, in the book of Revelation. You have cycle after cycle, seals, trumpets, bowls, all kinds of things, and every one of those cycles seems to end it. And then it doesn't end, it goes on and on. So here is the third one. It should have ended long ago, but when it ends with a surprise outside the city. And that is also something for next time. All right, we are doing this with some help from the audience, so I would like, could we read our first text? I see you have the microphone, so I thought, well, let's just do it.
And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And
read the other one too.
And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, make ready as a bride beautified for her husband.
So 2 things here, or 3 things. New heaven, new earth, and new city. And we see that the heaven, earth, city, they are linked. They are close together, isn't it? I saw a new heaven and I saw the holy city. It comes sort of hot on the heels of this vision of the world made new. So here is the first surprise. Like I said, that the earth, there is the earth here. There is an interest in the earth. And earth here means literally soil, materiality, the physical world. That it seems that Revelation affirms, confirms, and confers value on the world, on the physical world, on matter. And here I want to read to you, I want to put this in perspective a little. Origen of Alexandria, who lived in 2nd, 3rd century, 185 to 254, Origen of Alexandria is the most sophisticated of the church fathers and the most influential of the church fathers until the time of Augustine. Has any of you not heard of Origen? I am not going to ask you to raise your hand, because it could be that you haven't heard of Origen, because Adventist orientation, Adventist interest in church history is very selective. We have heard of Augustine. That is probably, inevitable. Between Augustine and Martin Luther, I don't think most Adventists have bothered. There's 1,000 years there when, nothing happened. Prior to Augustine, well, you had the apostles, and in between the time of Christ and Augustine, not very much. But Origen is a very nice person, highly educated, highly sophisticated, knowledgeable in languages. Werner Taylor is here, and he knows that Origen's work on the hexapla. Could you get the microphone to Bernard, and he will tell us in 2 sentences the main thing about hexapla. I know he would take the rest of the time if because it is so interesting and there is so much to say about it, but just a very quick take on the hexapla.
By the time of Origen, the text of the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, via the Septuagint, was in what we might call disarray, and he sat down and created 6 columns on each page. The first was the word, and he went a word at a time down the column. First word, the Hebrew. The second, transliterated into Greek, putting Greek characters in place of the Hebrew. And then he took selected translations that were available, Aquila in 3, Symmachus in 4, and Theodotion in 6. It's interesting in the way we understand it, because his 5th column work was where he noted the differences between the Hebrew and the Greek, words in the Hebrew that were not represented in the Greek and vice versa. And so he set out, in his term, to heal the text.
So you have a person who is highly educated. He is an excellent linguist. He sits down, takes the whole Old Testament, 6 columns, the whole thing through, written by hand, so the hexapla has been lost. It's one of the tragedies of, textual transmission, that this book has been lost. But here is this person who still today is the most influential theologian in Eastern Christianity. And I think he was a good man. Don't get me wrong there. Origen is the person in the history of Christianity who has the best grasp of what we call the story of cosmic conflict. If you want to have early Christian take on cosmic conflict, you don't need to wait for Ellen G. White. That's way too late. Origen has most of these things all figured out. But listen to what he says here. If therefore these conclusions appear logical, it follows that we must believe that our condition will be at some future time incorporeal. And this incorporeal condition shall be the privilege of all who come within the scope of this subjection to Christ. What is he saying? If you stick with Jesus, one day you will get rid of the body and the earth. One day we will return to the bliss of having nothing but, spirit or soul or whatever. So physical matter, physical bodies, materiality, earth, soil, all of that will disappear in Origen's universe, in Origen's view of what is ideal. We're not making this up. Origen cannot stop talking about it, and this is one of his most important books here. Thus it appears that even the use of bodies will cease. And if this happens, bodily nature returns to non-existence, just as it formerly did not exist. These are human bodies disappearing. But the earth is also, he doesn't even mention the earth, he just takes it for granted that there will be no earth. So one of the consequences of this in early Christianity is withdrawal from the world. This person here is Anthony, who was born in Egypt in about 250. He is the founder of the monastic movement, and he spent 40 years or so in a cave here in the desert near the Suez Canal, where he withdrew to the desert and withdrew from the world, from the earth, from normal living, because that was the ideal. And the story of Anthony has been written up, And this was the story that in some ways mediated the conversion of Augustine some years later. When Augustine writes in his Confessions how he was weeping and thinking about, converting, they were reading the story of Anthony and his thing in Egypt. I wonder if some of you have been here in Syria. This is up here in a region of Syria that is now very, very damaged. Has anyone of you been to this church about 50 kilometers from Aleppo? You have, maybe some have been. Yes, of course. Gerald Whitehouse has been there. Did you try to sit on the column? This church, or the ruins of this church, this was the second largest church in Eastern Christianity, second only to the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. A huge pilgrim church built around this 40 feet high column. It used to be higher. A column 40 feet high where a person named Simon was sitting day and night for about 40 years. Why did he do that? Because it was felt that the Christian ideal was to withdraw from the world, from the body, from the earth. That was kind of was the pattern. And I had heard about Simon stylitis in 4th grade in my little village. My little village is called Tonstad, and I attended a public school, and we had church history. We had a small volume of church history. We had to memorize our lesson. And there was a story of Simon Stylites, who was born in around 390. So he is a contemporary of Augustine. So Simon, I heard about him, and I was sitting in Norway, and I thought, wow, sitting on that column, day and night, winter and summer. Of course, I thought Norwegian winters and Norwegian summers. And I felt so sorry for him, how could he do that, scarf, gloves, It's cold there too in Syria, but not quite the same. This is the holy man, and Peter Brown has written, who is the foremost historian on this topic. He has written extensively about the influence of the holy person on the mindset, on the lives of people in this period, and how this legacy influenced Christian thinking, that there has always been this tendency to disaffirm the earth, to disaffirm the body, and here is a term, the rout of the body, that the body and the earth and matter was in some ways disparaged and just vanished, and that gets us from the ancient world into the medieval world and the ideals. And I'm now fast forwarding because this way of thinking, this disparagement of matter, that has carried on, as my hero here, Wendell Berry, who is a farmer in Kentucky, a writer, a poet, and a philosopher. I graduated from medical school in 1979. I read this book that year. It is one of my most treasured books, The Unsettling of America, Culture and Agriculture. And I have quoted this statement from Wendell Berry in many countries, many times. I try to teach students at Loma about him too, and I am often quite disappointed how little known he is among Adventists. The separation of the soul from the body and from the world is not a disease of the fringe, no aberration, but a fracture that runs through the mentality of institutional religion like a geologic fault. And this rift in the mentality of religion continues to characterize the modern mind, no matter how secular or worldly it becomes. And if you asked Wendell Berry, why is it that so many Christians are completely nihilistic about the environment? Why they have no interest in preserving the earth or sort of supporting efforts to take care of the earth, Wendell Berry will say, I'll tell you why. This is why. Because there is a fracture. The San Andreas fault of thought is this disparagement of matter. Now, Revelation doesn't do that. This is a picture of a place in Kentucky where they did strip mining or mountaintop mining, and Wendell Berry was there as far back as 68. Anyway, so the first surprise in Revelation's ending when it comes to the earth is that there is one, and that the Bible takes interest in it, and that it assumes that the earth is here to stay, and that God is investing in the earth, and that it continues to be part of the story. Now here is my translation for Revelation 21:1. Not new earth and new heaven, but renewed earth and renewed heaven. Because that's really how we should read it. Not that there is another earth, but it is the same old earth that has been fixed. The broken earth has now been made whole. You follow me? You want to discuss that? You want to argue the point, or embellish that, or what's your wish? I invite you to disagree, of course. That's how people read it today. The notion of kainos, the new earth, is in the thinking of most scholars now, the earth renewed and not another earth. It's the end of the old order. It is end of a certain state of things, not new things as such. That's the connotation here in Revelation. Let's read a couple more verses here. Let's have someone read from this side, please. Just to see that this new earth, so-called, has traits of familiarity.
And the angel showed me the river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb. In the middle of her street and the river that is in the middle, on either side of the tree of life, making 12 kinds of fruit, producing its fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations.
So in what way is this a familiar description? What is familiar about it? What? Yeah, so there is, so familiar, specifically.
It seems odd to me that it's fruit every month, 12 months. That is earthly.
Okay, that's good. It's also an image from Ezekiel. We'll do it next time, Ezekiel 47. So there is an echo of the Old Testament here. What else? Yes?
There's an echo of the description of the rivers flowing in Eden.
So we're back in Genesis. We're back at it is an earth we have seen before, and a river we have seen before, isn't it? There is something familiar about it. Anything else? Well, what about the trees? Well, there's a tree there, and I spend many pages in my commentary discussing that tree. And I'm just wondering, there is a tree there. It's the tree of life. Have we seen the tree of life before? Yes. Oh, what happened to the tree of knowledge? The Revelation doesn't say, what is going on here. But we cannot do that today. We're just saying that, yes, it seems that it must be renewed heaven and renewed earth just from the way it is described, because there are elements of familiarity here. And then you see also that earth and city are linked in Revelation 21:1 and 21:2, and earth and city are also linked in the Old Testament antecedent text 65:7 in Isaiah, 65, 18, and 17 in Isaiah. So you see, same linkage of earth and city, new earth, new heavens, and new city. Also in the Old Testament vision that is echoing here in the ending of Revelation. All right, let's read this one. Another reader, please. Volunteer, please. Thank you.
And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Look, the dwelling place of God is among human beings. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them. And God will wipe every tear from their eyes, and death will be no more, nor grief, nor wailing, nor pain will be any more, for the former state of things has passed away."
We talked about the tears part last time, that God has is assuming the prerogative to be the one who wipes away the tears, and we talked about the scars that underlie our tears, that those things, there seems to be a promise, a horizon where those things will cease to matter, where he will in some ways do some kind of deep healing. But what's happening here? What's the bigger surprise? Maybe, yes, earth, yes, city, and now what? Well, what's happening here? God relocates to. So the changing of the narrative, the changing of the landscape of the ending of the story in Revelation is huge. So we go to heaven, or what? You know, the ending is the redeemed go to heaven, and the end of the story. You never see earth again. And I think there are some songs that are songs that should not cease to be used. Negro spirituals and African American spirituals should still be used, even though this world is not my home. I'm just a passing through. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door. I can't feel at home in this world anymore. And you can understand why African American slaves did not see a future in this world as an attractive prospect. So let us go to heaven by all means. But you know, in an other sense, that isn't how the story ends. So what is it? How does it end? God moves to earth. That is how the story ends. And I thought I was bringing a bigger suitcase, but I could have brought a bigger suitcase, and everyone comes to heaven. And you see that when you arrive there are suitcases. And you look at the suitcases, and you look, where are those? Why, suitcases here. So whose suitcase is it? It's God's suitcase. It's God's suitcase. And where is God going? He's traveling. He's traveling to earth, you know, which is in some ways not so strange, because God became a human being. This is a sort of Christological reading of the story. God became a human being. He did not just make-believe become a human being. He became irreversibly a human being. It wasn't just, as James Barr says, that the incarnation was just a temporary stage in God's experience. It was a permanent, irreversible stage. And when he came back to heaven, which I do believe that is part of the story, he told the Father, I am going back to earth. And the Father said, if you are going, I am also going. You know, that's the story. You know, we're all going. So that is the story. God himself will be with them. And so is this surprising? Is the ending of the story, does it enhance your respect for the name? Does it add something to your understanding of the name in the broadest sense? Or is the ending of the story has no returns for how we perceive the name? It seems to me it has a huge impact on how we perceive the name. Now, Ali Benitez, who was here in the School of Religion, and I hope she will come back soon. She helped me some years ago to make this this slide. In Johannine literature, there is up and down. There is up from earth to heaven, from heaven to earth, from heaven to earth, from earth to heaven. In John, the ending of John, you will see the Son of Man. No, what is it? How does it say it? John 1:51. The angels of God will walk up and down, or something like that. Anyway, doesn't matter. So, where does it end here? In the Gospel of John, it seems to end in heaven. I go to prepare a place for you, and I will come back and take you to myself, that where I am, you shall be also. But in Revelation, it doesn't end like that. In Revelation, the New Jerusalem comes to earth, and God comes to earth, and the permanent address of these dwellers, they are all earthlings. Is that true? That is the truth. That is how it ends in Revelation. No less than that. Was there a hand here, a comment? Yes, please. Let's have you have a microphone so people can hear you. And I think our daughter, Crystal, who was here last time, she is back in Norway, and maybe she is with us on a live stream, so she can hear you too.
Not long ago, I saw something quoting Carl Sagan, and he said, and I've heard this before, we live on a small, ordinary, rather unimportant planet. Here is the big break. No, it's anything but that in the future.
Yeah. Good point. Thank you for that. Let's read this one. Have someone. We need to just do this expeditiously. Can someone do that? Read the 1, 4, and 5.
John, to the 7 churches that are in Asia, grace to you and peace from the one who is, and the one and who was, and who is to come, and from Jesus Christ, the witness, the trustworthy one, the firstborn of the dead, and the ruler of the kings of the earth.
So here we need another lesson in Greek from Bernard, but we will not take time to do that, except to say, and I think he might confirm that in this, when you read this text in Greek, it violates the rules of the language. It violates the rules of grammar. It is an extremely strange way of talking. So, justifying why does he read such bad Greek? Why is he a C student, maybe a D or F? He doesn't know how to write Greek. Well, he is trying to replicate in Greek the diction, the way of thinking in the Old Testament in another language. And the text he is echoing here is Exodus 3:14. I am who I am. That text. But how should you read the text I am who I am? Should you read it philosophically? I am the self-existent one. Should you read it what is the other one? I am I am who I am. That's a kind of enigmatic. Is it I am the one who is unknowable? There is sort of something there that stops you. This is how you should read it, according to an Old Testament expert. It is not the idea of eternity which is primary when the Israelites pronounce the name I am who I am, but that of presence. God is he who is with someone. So when Revelation at the end says that the dwelling place of God is with human beings, the tabernacle of God is with human beings, it is a non-surprise. It isn't really surprising. It is in some way something that is embedded in the name, that God is the one who is with somebody. So you should not read it philosophically. You should read it relationally. And so the relocation at the end, in that sense, merely confirms the type of person God is. And how should this work for Adventists? How should this work in Adventist theology? Let me have one of you read Jürgen Moltmann's statement here. So Jürgen Moltmann is still alive. He is very weakened, and we had 3 of our sisters, women here, make a pitch for women's ordination or women's work, women in ministry. And Jürgen Moltmann is also very much in favor of that and has spoken to it. And even now that he's very debilitated, he came to Oslo last year and he could barely speak, but he spoke on that subject and told us it's very important. He is probably the most influential theologian in the world still alive. Listen to what he says here. Let's read it.
The Sabbath in the time of the first creation links this world and the world to come. It is the presence of God in the time of those he has created, or, to put it more precisely, the dynamic presence of eternity in time, which links beginning and end, those awakening remembrance and hope.
So I'm going to paraphrase that and say, so when at the end of the story, God's dwelling is with human beings, is that a surprise? It is not so much a surprise. It is a big thing. It is a big thing that God is with human beings. It's a big thing that he is on earth. But it isn't altogether surprising, because that was the meaning of the name from the beginning. God is the one who is with somebody. That's how the name is defined. And then in Sabbath thinking, what is the meaning of Sabbath? The Sabbath is the same meaning. God is present with human beings. So the ending of the story in Revelation, that God is with human beings, is similar to the beginning of the story in Genesis, when God institutes the Sabbath and God is with them. So the Sabbath, as I try to say in my book here, and I wish I could have said it even better, but I have said it better than most people who have written on the Sabbath. That I will claim. That the main meaning of the Sabbath is not divine commandment, but divine commitment. God's commitment, God's presence, more than something, let's say, something we do for God, something we do to show that we are sort of, in on it. You see that? So here, Sabbath theology also at its best is an affirmation or a sort of preview of the way the story ends in Revelation. Are you with me? Are these big items? Can you see the Sabbath as a meaning-making, entity, meaning-making phenomenon, sort of taking back into God-forsakenness, the idea that we have not been forsaken. These are issues. So there is another statement from Moltmann here, but I'm skipping it, and I have offered everyone my slides. If you want my slides, I will make them available, and we'll find a way to do that. I couldn't resist putting this in, even though I am not reading it, because there is there is a tool in in PowerPoint now where they make the slides for you. They give you suggestions to make the slides look nicer, and they made such a nice slide here for me. Sabbath again. In the Old Testament witness, you see the link between what is new and the sort of Sabbatarian sort of consummation here. It's quite amazing, quite beautiful. So, yes, let's read here, and then we have a few minutes to talk, and I can also play you a song at the end. Who reads this one?
Both of them?
Yes, please.
Okay.
What remind me of your name.
I'm Derek.
We'd like to get to know you.
One of the chaplaincy students.
Yes, thank you. So nice to meet you.
And the one who is seated on the throne said, "Look, I am making all things renewed." And he also said, "Write, for these words are trustworthy and true." Then he said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give water as a gift from the spring of the water of life. Those who win the war will inherit these things, and I will be their God, and they will be my children."
So all the way through Revelation, there is dialogue. There is a sort of, exclamation, look, see, talking back and forth. It heats up toward the ending. There is some commentators on Revelation say that when John reaches the ending, he is kind of run out of steam. It is anticlimactic, that there is one person who wrote on Revelation 2 volumes 100 years ago, still amazing commentaries that are still read and that are much to recommend. But he says that when John gets to chapter 20 in Revelation, he dies. And he had left notes, left all kinds of messy notes. And one of his, if we could distribute this to everyone. So one of his students found the notes, and he did the best he could with the remainder of the book, 20, 21, and 22. And so he, it wasn't very successful. He was just a C student who did that. It seems to me quite the opposite, that when you get to the ending, the pace quickens. Look, right, done. You have these phrases. They're more exclamatory, more sort of taking it up a notch. And here are these these ideas supporting the notion that at the end things will be even better than they were before. Yes, you have restoration. You have more than restoration, and the God who is with human beings at the end of the story is himself, a member of the human family. So these thoughts are quite amazing, and Revelation does take charge of the ending of the story in quite a remarkable way. So by way of summary here, Revelation and the earth, materiality, earth, and relocation. And again, thank you to PowerPoint. I got this for nothing. It just happened. I'd like us to finish again with the song of Leonard Cohen's song. We didn't get to do it with actual tape. And I thought if you you can look at the words here, which was the verse that I wanted to highlight. It was the main one was this one. Oh, let the heavens falter and let the earth proclaim. Even if heaven cannot get this right, the earth will come to the help of heaven and do it and pitch in, as it were. Come healing of the altar, come healing of the name. There is something very big in need of healing here, and that is the most focused thing. Now, if I'm successful in playing it here, then I would like you to look at Leonard Cohen, how he behaves, his body language in this recording. So that's it for today. Let me just say that the book of Revelation, it's a formation of the earth, in some ways sort of enhanced or mediated to us in part through some music like this in Leonard Cohen, and with the help of our own imagination, sort of, rethinking these things ourselves. I think there is something to do, and that these visions can still shape the identity of a community like ours.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Tonstad. Oh, did you have a question up there?
Forrest, you might want to mention that they can get this on YouTube this evening. Just go to YouTube's search bar and type in Sigve Tonstad.
Thank you. Okay, Ron.
Many people in the world were very troubled by Copernicus when he said the Earth is not the center. And yet you want to go back to a pre-Copernican idea. But maybe, as always, we can look at things scientifically, or we can look for the meaning of things. And the meaning of the Earth, the renewed Earth, the meaning changes. And so we can live with Copernicus, and we can live with St. John.
Okay. All right. We continue this series next week on the city, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The city.
And then remember, do you have a question too?
Yes, I have. He talked about Copernicus. Before that was Galileo Galilei. He said the Earth is the center of the universe, just almost in the same time. I think Galileo Galilei was right, because the center of the universe means the capital of the universe. And when the throne of God will be on this earth, the capital of the universe will be moved right here in this earth.
Okay. Thank you. Next week, the city. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up to be on our mailing list, our emailing list, please sign up here. And I also have some brochures for the Association of Adventist Women. At this time, let's have our benediction. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.